I'm Jake.
I'm Tom.
And we are VIMTV, Velocities in Music, the best kept secret in music reviews. Today, we are going to review a new album from an artist you might have heard of before, Daft Punk, Random Access Memories. Daft Punk may be the definition, in my mind at least, of really just awesome dance music.
Yeah.
And whether you call their roots, you know, it's in the past they've been very electronica based, lots of big sample based with big beats. There's almost a punk-esque side of their music.
Yeah.
Daft Punk, I think that's where they derive their name, right? But this is a band that, or a French duo that have really revolutionized electronica and dance music over the past 20 years, really.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, are still. It's been 7 years since they put out an album. This is their fourth album. I think their last album, 8 years. Their last album came out in 2005.
Yeah, Human After All.
Yep, and I mean, like, that's huge. You have eight years, and then you come out with this huge album. This is a long album. It's 74 minutes long, a double album by most people's counts. And quite honestly, I think that they're trying to make a statement with this album. Now, Tom, you know a lot about Daft Punk and also some background information on Random Access Memories.
Yeah, and looking into the history of this group and this album was very interesting, and I think that this is one case where it's really key to appreciating, you know, the artistic input that they're putting into this album. You go back to the mid-90s, 97, their first album came out, Homework, and I mean, you listen to that today and it still sounds current. And that's what's great about these guys, is they're such forward thinkers. They, as far as their production styles, yeah, their composition styles in the dance world, incorporating a lot of cool, you know, guitar bass lines, the beat construction, just top notch. And when Discovery came out, their second album, is when they started to incorporate those kind of vocoded vocals into the mix. Right. And that was really cool. And that's something that you hear a lot on Random Access Memories. They're pulling that from themselves and some of the things that they set up early in their career. But then, as opposed to their last album, Human After All, which I'll say right now, we're not quite counting the Tron Legacy soundtrack in there. In fact, we had a lot of people request for us to review that, and I think the main reason we didn't is because when it comes to soundtracks, they're tougher to review because there's a greater context. We're really looking for something that an artist makes as an album. Right. And really, the Tron Legacy soundtrack is almost closer to being a musical score than a soundtrack. For sure, I mean, it's very good for what it is, but it's hard to compare with all the other myriad albums that we've reviewed.
We have no frame of reference.
Exactly. So looking at this as their fourth studio album, just LP, it's very different from their last one because their last one was even more electronic. It just felt so robotic. And they were going for something very different on Random Access Memories in the sense that these are live performances. These are real drummers and keyboardists and bass players, and it's not all sample construction. It's actually much less of an electronica album. Right. Because there are electronic components for sure, but even a lot of those are performed live rather than being put together digitally. Yeah. And they were really doing that because they wanted to pull from a sound that influenced them from the 70s and 80s. That's where the term Random Access Memories comes from. It's a great play on words when taking that digital, you know, kind of computer, how they remember things, and then comparing it with how people remember things. And that's really what they do, is they combine the robotic with the human, and they do that in a very cool way on this album.
At the same time, they're also even giving us like a West Coast vibe on this album. It has this just chill feel to it. And really, to take your point a step further, I think the only track that's mostly, if not purely sample-based, is the track that Panda Bear is a guest artist on, track 12, Doing It Right. So, I mean, that alone shows you just how much they wanted to change their sound. Yet this album is clearly a Daft Punk record.
No mistaking it.
When you're listening to this, I'm like, wow, this is truly Daft Punk sound. Like, I feel like I'm listening to just this kick-ass Daft Punk record. And man, this is robust. When you get, so I mean, this thing makes a statement. First track opens up, Give Life Back to Music, and then two of my favorite track picks follow that cool opener with The Game of Love, and then Giorgio by Moroder, is that how you say it?
I have no idea.
We'd suck at pronouncing things.
Well, it's European, it's Italian.
Yeah,
come on, give us a break.
Track 3, Giorgio by Moroder, that track is so interesting because you have that monologue, and the music works with the monologue, and it also works as a kind of a artistic representation of how this album was constructed.
Exactly, yes.
And not to mention that the music within that, you know, 9-minute track is absolutely out of this world, batshit crazy, and awesome.
It's the perfect example of not letting a concept for a song compromise the quality of the song itself.
Right.
It never takes backseat to just the song kicking ass in itself.
Sure.
And that I absolutely love. But there's so much blending of styles on this album. You know, while you do have the kind of classic dance, like I said, it's brought about by real guitar, great kind of funk, disco guitar. You get a lot of that same vibe in the drums and the bass, especially lack of cymbals in the drums. That's a disco staple when it comes to stylistic drumming.
Yep, and there's a lot of like jazz-esque guitar on here
definitely.
too, and a lot of fusion sound too. Like it really. I mean, it's kind of the whole package as far as that era, the early, you know, anywhere from like the 50s all the way through, from the fusion perspective, from like Bitches Brew, Miles Davis, on into like some of the 70s and 80s rock. I mean, it is a very well blended, very well balanced album. I really like all the guest artists.
I was hoping you'd go there next.
We absolutely need to talk about this, because track 5, Instant Crush, you know, has Julian Casablancas of the Strokes, and that's clearly a Strokes song. Like
I knew that had to be the one with him in it before he even started singing, because I was like, this sounds like the new Strokes album. It just worked.
It really does, but it still has that Daft Punk feel, which is what I like, is that these other artists can come in and do a guest spot and make it their own, but at the same time, it's still Daft Punk, and you can tell it's Daft Punk. The same thing with track 12, Doing It Right with Panda Bear. There's also Paul Williams and Pharrell Williams on Get Lucky, which is a track pick of mine. So I really like a lot of the guest spots that they did. I felt like that it was just like the perfect synergy between the two artists. And really, they did a great job of scoping this album and shaping it so that it's a straight through listen, and making sure that like the more intense tracks, balancing the intensity of the tracks, and making sure that everything is kind of balanced and fluid, so you can put this on from the beginning and listen to all 74.5 minutes of this album and love every single second of it. You never feel like this album is too long. It's a blast to listen to all the way through. Really, I can't find that many like bad things to say about it. The more I listen to it, the more I like it. Tom, where are you thinking you're at on this one?
I'm thinking mid-80s. I'm actually going to go 86.
Wow. I'm going to go 87.
Awesome.
Just to be the wiener who pushes the score up to 87.
Just to be cooler than that. I get it.
Yeah, I know. It's the way it is. Honestly, I think this album could go higher, given like another couple months with it. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if I'm still listening to Random Access Memories.
Well, it's got a great vibe. You know, you can listen to this in just about any setting and enjoy it and really dig into it musically. It could work as background music. It works when you're really paying attention to it and dissecting it. And that's, you know, what more could you want?
On Wikipedia page for this album, one of the guys was saying that they are actually talking about how like the albums that are, you remember, like the Beatles, Sgt. Pepper, like the Who's Quadrophenia or Tommy, like these are timeless albums that you listen to on long car rides, and that was kind of what they were striving for to make, and I feel like they might have actually you know, done that, but that's hugely ambitious.
I'll come out and say these guys are one of the most influential groups in dance music and electronica, and while I don't think that you'll ever get an influence that's bigger than their first couple records, I think that from a music listening perspective, this is easily their best.
It might be their magnum opus.
I think so.
Wow. What did you guys think of Random Access Memories? We would love to hear your comments about this album at www.velocitiesofmusic.com or youtube.com/velocitiesofmusic. As always, follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, let us know what albums from 2013 you're pumped up about and want to see us review. I'm Jake.
I'm Tom.
And we are VIMTV, moving music critique forward.